Hello, hello. Welcome to Minds on Mushrooms, where we're unveiling the magic behind psychedelics for mental health and addiction. Today, I am so honored to have with me Keelia Ryan. You are tuning in, zooming in from Maine, right?
Yeah.
Wow. How's the start to the summer for you?
It's been really beautiful so far. Maine is really, everyone in Maine lives for the summer, just New England world. I feel like, it's been so beautiful, so expansive. We started off with the Maine Fungi Fest, which I was a speaker at, which was really, really exciting. And the summer's just been kicking off from there.
Well, wonderful. I am so thrilled to have you here. There's so much to cover. I guess let's start with kind of about what you're doing and what your mission exactly is.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Plant Allied Recovery, which is a community and program for people in recovery who want to work with plant medicine in a safe, sacred, and intentional way. So it's a program kind of similarly to AA in that it's a spiritual program, except without some of the dogma. It's open to all who are looking for an alternative pathway to recover. And my mission is really to spread awareness and education on plant medicines and how to work with them in a good way, how to focus on the decolonization of these medicines and spread awareness of harm reduction for folks. It's been a huge part of my path that I'm sure we'll get into of having unsafe ceremonial spaces. So it's really important to me to spread education and information about plant medicine safety and right relation and good use of plant medicine.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for all of your work. And your mission is beautiful and I fully support it. Let's start off talking about where things are legality wise in Maine.
Yes.
Medicine.
Yeah, so in Portland, Maine, actually, plant medicines are decriminalized. It's just in the city that I'm currently living in, which is Portland. In the entire state of Maine, it's a different story. But in Portland specifically, plant medicines are decriminalized. So I believe everything except for peyote, which has specific protections due to the fact that it's kind of in danger. So it's good that that is there. But ayahuasca, wachuma, mushrooms, iboga, all of those medicines are decriminalized here in Portland.
Wow. And Portland, that just seems a little ironic, I guess. Let's talk about, I love hearing, and I know that the word journey is such a long and never-ending journey, but I would love to hear kind of your experience and how you exactly found yourself in this crazy, wonderful, magical world of psychedelics.
Yeah, beautiful. So my journey really, the reason that I came to plant medicines was really because of trauma. So trauma is a big part of my journey. It's part of my experience, but I won't go into any details. So, no need to have a trigger warning here, but just really briefly brushing over kind of the experience of what happened. So for those of you listening who might be sensitive to that, just know for the next few minutes, I'm going to be sharing about that, but in no detail. So, when I was younger, I was really struggling with scoliosis. I wore a back brace all through middle school and high school. Mm-hmm. And around that time, when I was about 16, I had a traumatic event happen to me where I was kidnapped, and I had a really hard time integrating back into my world after having such a traumatic experience. I think high schoolers at that time and even now just didn't know how to deal with the mental health challenges and had a lot of insensitive questions about what had happened. And so that made me feel really isolated and sort of the perfect storm at the same time. Having chronic pain, I was prescribed opiates to manage the pain at 16. And, by the time that I got my back spinal fusion, which happened when I was 19, I had been prescribed fentanyl and oxys and morphine for years. And it was something that really for me was supporting me in a way, being prescribed those things. There was we talk a lot about it in the recovery world that we often use because it's solving a problem, right? And so I didn't know how to solve that problem without opiates and without medication. And that ended up leading me to down a really, really dark path. So when I was 19, about 6 months after getting my entire back fused together, my fiance of 3.5 years committed suicide in our apartment.
Oh my God. Wow.
And just like I said, the best coping skill that I had at the time to deal with that type of grief and the trauma that I was still working through was to use. And so I ended up very shortly after becoming an IV heroin and meth user. And I was homeless, living on the streets of Portland for a few years, in and out of jail, and really struggling to get myself grounded again. I was filled with so much guilt. It's a really common thing for people that are survivors of suicide. And so I was filled with so much guilt and really wanting to numb that out and not feel any of that. And so for me, after enough time of living on the streets, I did have sort of an awakening at 23 where I just recognized that my heart and who I am was not meant to be, a homeless heroin addict, that I was meant for so much more than what my life currently was. And so for me, I ended up getting sober with the help of AA, but that didn't help my trauma, right? So they consider an AA trauma to be an outside issue. And so I did go to trauma therapy. I was trying all of the Western modalities. I tried EMDR, and it was just making me feel even worse at times. One of the issues with EMDR is that it can bring up a lot of trauma, a lot of repressed memories. And so that was happening for me. And so at a few years sober, I felt like a raw nerve walking around, and I felt like I was on the verge of another relapse because I couldn't handle the way that I felt internally. And so I had a beautiful opportunity. I had gone back to school for social work. I was working in a rehab at the time as a trauma specialist, and I had the beautiful opportunity of doing a research project with a professor I really loved. And I chose to research microdosing. It was something that I had just started to learn about, and it had come into my consciousness, and I had had a deep connection with psychedelics before all of the trauma. As a teenager, I just remember sitting with medicine and feeling connected to everything. And it was always a really healing and spiritual experience for me. And so I really knew and believed in the power of plants and fungi medicines for that ability to heal. And I began microdosing. And a lot of healing did happen as a result of intentionally microdosing. And I say that because I have also worked with microdosing without bringing that intentionality in, and not as much healing is possible in that way. So I'm a huge advocate of bringing intentionality into a microdosing practice to really continue the healing that you need to work through, and really bring that right relation and reverence, and start working with these medicines and forming the relationship with them. So
I hear you. Just to interject there. So you came across the opportunity to help put together or work on a research paper or study specific to microdosing. Were you at that time kind of experimenting on your own, or were you truly, tell me more about that.
Yeah. So the research project was on myself. I had a professor's guidance I was the test
Okay.
subject. And
Yep.
I talked to my sponsor, I talked to my mom, I talked to my therapist about this path, and
Mhm.
recognizing like I had so much fear around it because I recognized that this is a mind altering substance that I'm putting into my body. And even at a sub perceptual level, like microdosing,
Mhm.
I was still afraid of losing my clean time. I had worked so hard
Sure.
to be sober and to overcome the person that I was, that it just, yeah, it really scared me. And so I started the path. I researched the different protocols out there and started learning my own. And really the what I found from the evidence, there wasn't too much. It was a 6-month research project, and there wasn't too much evidence, especially just being one person and then comparing it to the research that was currently available. And that was
Mhm.
back in 2018. So there wasn't too much research available then
Yeah.
compared to now. Um, but yeah, what I really found about microdosing is that bringing in intention makes a huge difference, and also listening and tuning into your body and using these medicines as a way to deepen your connection to self, to your highest self, to the part of you, your intuition. There's lots of different words for it, but the part of you that can have that subtle whisper of what to shift and what to change in your life, to learn how to be present and tune into that. So I incorporated other things like breath work and meditation
Mhm.
into my studies. And yeah, it was really beautiful to have the results just for myself, but it didn't get to a place where I felt like I had fully healed from all of the trauma. I felt
Okay.
like I had started that journey, like peeling back an onion. I had gone through that first few layers and I
Mhm.
needed a deeper experience. So that's why I ended up continuing my studies on the plant medicine path, working at multiple retreat centers, specifically with ayahuasca is the
Okay.
medicine
Mhm.
that I've done the most kind of facilitation work around,
Gotcha.
just working with indigenous practitioners and holding space in ceremony and helping to create that container in that way.
Wow.
Um, and
Um,
oh, go ahead.
so, well, I just wanted to back up a little. When you talk about heading to AA for your opioid addiction, can we talk about so this idea of microdosing, came into your conscious mind. Is it having that conversation with your sponsor? Is it, from my understanding, I'm not an A person and I don't know much, but it's really probably not something that's talked about or suggested that you take any sort of substance or look into anything like that, right?
Totally. And, that's really why I've created Plant Allied Recovery and the free meetings that I have available, because it's so often that people do kind of get shunned or are told that they can't talk about this healing modality in those spaces.
Okay.
So my sponsor, I just happened to have a very kind of holistic minded sponsor that
Mhm.
was really in support of me and knew me well and knew that my recovery and my intentions were to heal and not to try to escape. And that's the huge
Okay.
difference, right? Because
Yes.
sometimes people in recovery who are struggling, they want to try these substances to escape how they feel.
Mhm.
And the irony is that really sitting, especially a macro dose, right? Sitting with medicine, you really can't escape it. Like it's
Mhm.
actually just a truth serum and shows you everything that you need to work on in your life.
Right.
Um, but I did lose all of my friendships as a result. So I lost my
Mm.
entire community when I started microdosing, and I was honest about it. Before that, I was the chairperson of the main committee and young people in AA, and I was really active in the AA community and doing a lot of service work.
Wow.
Um, but I lost that entire community and kind of stepped away from AA.
Oh my goodness. Something coming to mind as I'm about to celebrate my 19th month of sobriety this weekend. Um, and it's funny because for this podcast, you can't tell, but I poured some of my favorite NA champers in there. Um, I was just wanting to get clarity with AA. It's come up a couple times where is it part of the practice where consuming like NA beers or like an NA spirit, is that kind of frowned upon as well. I'm only just curious because I'm also leaning into sobriety and I choose to celebrate it. And it's funny how my version of celebration is kind of like picking up the NA version of what I was once addicted to.
Yeah.
Is that something, any point of note or not, maybe?
Yeah. So I think it's important to clarify the difference between AA, the program of recovery, and
Okay,
AA, the community. Because
gotcha.
the community, as any spiritual community, we see this happen in the plant medicine world, we see it happen in the yoga world. As
Hmm.
in any community, there are going to be, a lot of beliefs and a lot of kind of shared groupthink beliefs that
Hmm.
happen in the community. Whereas
Gotcha.
the program of AA, which is the 12 steps of AA, is
Mhm.
about having a spiritual experience. It's about doing the shadow work and doing, cleaning your side of the street so that you can have a closer connection to spirit.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Okay.
that's what AA is really all about. And so they don't have, like, AA, the program doesn't have any opinions on those types of things, especially because it was created in the 1930s and there really wasn't like non-alcoholic beverages widely available then.
Yeah,
So they don't have any opinion on that. Although the program of AA would tell you that things like kombucha, even like you shouldn't
right.
drink that because there's, less than 1% alcohol in there, and that any substance is going to bring you to your drug of choice or your substance of choice. And so,
Okay.
um, yeah.
I really appreciate that clarification. That is something I truly did not know, and I have not heard it explained in such a clear manner. So thank you. Um, okay, so then you were saying you were healing, and then ultimately you did sit with ayahuasca. Um,
Yeah.
yourself. Can you talk about? I love hearing, profound experiences or any sort of, I don't know, catalyst moment. Feel free to enlighten.
Yeah, sure. So I ended up sitting with ayahuasca. And for me, the most profound part of sitting with that medicine, especially after doing so much internal work and so much work with the microdosing,
Mhm.
was really the community for the first time. It was this idea of coming together and healing in community was really powerful for me, especially, as I said, after losing my entire recovery community. That was the most profound piece. But one thing about working with medicine that I've seen being an integration specialist now, and with everything that I do and how many people I've supported in their journeys, is that sometimes when people first start working with medicine, they don't have that kind of big experience. They might have what is a huge experience to them in that moment.
Mhm.
But really, I mean, at this point, I have sat, in over 100 ayahuasca ceremonies. And at this
Wow.
point, like, I've had many experiences that far surpass my first one. I had some visions, but it wasn't super clear. My very first experience, actually someone next to me in the container who's a dear friend of mine now, but she started what we call psychosis. She went into psychosis. So she was like, where am I? Who are you guys? Why am I here? Kind of forgot that she had taken medicine and was going through an experience. And that pulled me out of my journey. I think the part of me that has always loved holding space for others, and that is what I would call an empath. And, that piece of me was
Mhm.
really triggered in that moment to want to know how I could support this girl next to me, lying on the mat next to me. And so I didn't really have much of an experience my first time. I was able to pull
Oh,
myself out of it.
wow.
Um, my second, because it was a retreat weekend, my second experience, I felt like I was having a conversation with my fiance who had passed away, and I felt a lot of guilt lift where he kind of shared that it was what was meant to happen, and that I couldn't have done anything to change it, and it's just how it was. And so I had a really healing
Wow.
experience with that, which is what really brought me to continue down the path. And after that very first ceremony, I was asked um, to facilitate there. They didn't have anyone at that center who was trauma informed, and because my first night sitting, I kind of ended up holding space.
Yeah.
They asked me to start facilitating after my very first experience, which felt
Wow.
huge to me. I was like, are you sure? I'm so new to this.
Yeah.
But it really did launch me on a path, and I'm not connected with that church anymore. I've had a lot of experiences with different medicine churches that are really doing the work for the wrong reasons.
Oh,
And that was unfortunately one of them. But I have continued to deepen my study through working with that medicine and working with teachers all over the world at this point.
oh, wow. So how many years in it would you say? So I kind of want to know from the start of you first intentionally microdosing to where you are today. Are we over a decade?
No, no. Yeah, I still feel in a lot of ways like I am a baby on this path. Like I know that if just each year I just continue to grow and deepen and find more and more lessons and more messages from the medicine.
Yes.
Um, but it has been about 6 years
Oh,
of
wow.
working with medicine at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, so I started my journey in 2018 and yeah, have continued until now. But I think that also because I was working in the spaces, I had a very fast track
Hmm.
because there was a period of time where I was sitting with quite a lot of medicine. And that's something that I've had to learn for myself is what is balance? How often should we be working with these medicines? I've had to like explore that within myself to really make sure that I'm coming to these medicines with balance and reverence and respect, because I see in these spaces so many people that are so infatuated with the medicine and so grateful, and it can sometimes lead to sort of an unbalanced way of being. And so I consider some of my work to be descension. A lot of people talk about ascension, where like we're ascending. And for
Yeah.
me, I feel like my work is how do we bring the sacred back down into our
Mm.
bodies and into the earth so that we can show up in the world as the beings that we are meant to show up as.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea of living grounded too. I think in this space, it is, especially when you're exploring and doing so much self discovery, you sometimes wonder, am I just, floating in the sky? And how does this remain relevant and safe? And I really appreciate kind of that. I don't know, I'm going to say deconstruction model, or where you're really tuning in inward. Um, in order to take the next step outward, I guess. So that's interesting because you have background kind of with the 12-step program, or programs. I don't know if there's more than one, and kind of like, but then also leaning into the reverence and the ceremonial aspect. And yeah, I do you want to talk a little bit about that Western model meets Eastern?
Yeah, totally. I would love to. So, yeah, I think that from both going to school for social work and having, that experience working in different rehabs, particularly around recovery, there are really great aspects of Western, like Western mental health. I really do believe that there is a lot of good there, and that the issue is really in the systems. It's the systemic problems that are causing so much harm, where people get stuck in a system and they don't actually progress or go anywhere. And that is where, mixing that mentality with the plant medicines and the way that kind of spiritual model can heal us, it enables people to recognize that we are all our own best healers. And so I'm a total nerd for learning, and for learning especially about mental health and about trauma and about harm reduction and about addiction. I think that it's really important for us to know all of the knowledge that we can if we are wanting to heal ourselves of something. But ultimately, what the medicines all teach us is that we are the medicine ourselves, that we are our own best healers. And so what it really comes down to is how can we work with these medicines in a grounded way and really enable these medicines to be a catalyst for us to step into our best selves, the highest versions of us, and really make big changes in our life. And so, yeah, where the intersection of these two different modalities meets is really kind of where I operate. I love, teaching about different ways to calm our nervous systems and then incorporating doing those practices while microdosing. Like we can do, emotional freedom technique, EFT, we can do, breath work and meditation, and we can reparent ourselves all while having increased neuroplasticity by working with these medicines and microdosing. And so it can really take the tools that we have available through the Western framework of mental health and and when they resonate with us, because not everything is meant to resonate with everyone. And that's really the problem with Western modalities as well, as it's very one
Sure.
size fits all. And so where they resonate, we can take them, we can implement them into our lives ourselves. And really, I want everyone who's listening to feel like they can be their own best healers, that we all have that power within us to be able to heal ourselves. And we can lean on our allies, our fungi and plant allies, to support us.
Hmm.
But ultimately, we have that power within.
So true and so important. Really, we're just talking about tools, and the real work comes down to the individual. And I think it all comes back to the intention. And also, if you're wanting change, you have to be committed to it. I'm curious. This kind of leads me to my next question. Do you work with people who are currently struggling or in the thick of addiction? Alcoholism, drugs. I don't know. Are you taking on people, or must they come to you with the intention of sobriety and healing from there?
Yeah. So, because of the nature of the work that I do, our program is mostly online. So, there's an entire course associated with it, as well as one on one and group coaching. And really, that's to support people in finding community. But because it is an online program, I really think that doesn't have enough structure for people who are still actively struggling to use. I think that it is so important to really, take the space to find who you are without all of the noise of these other, things that we can put inside of us. And that includes plant medicine. Now, that being said, I know many people that have gotten sober with plant medicine. I don't do that work specifically, but I know many people who do, serve iboga and other medicines that can really support people in achieving sobriety. And I know people who have gotten sober with ayahuasca and with mushrooms, and that's all beautiful too. But really, within the work that I do, I like people to already have some sort of foundation.
Mhm.
And then when they want to kind of step into that next level and really connect to spirit and learn how to connect to the earth and learn how to implement these medicines in a way that's going to really help them expand. But without that foundation, we can't really build anything on it, right? So the
Sure.
foundation is a little bit of recovery first.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's talk about plant allied recovery, and let's talk about some of your offerings. I think you were mentioning you have, well, I'll let you tell me. You offer some sort of a monthly recovery community
Yeah,
gathering.
it's so we have a weekly
Oh, weekly.
yeah, we have a weekly meeting. So right now we meet on every Wednesday, 12
Okay.
Eastern Standard Time.
Wow.
Um, and we meet and we, integrate together. We talk about how these medicines are supporting us in our life. We talk a lot about right relation and the importance of integration and how to really, work with these medicines in an intentional, good way. And so, yeah, that's a peer support meeting that is free to all.
Okay.
That meets every Wednesday. And then I also have our program as well. And our program is a course. It is also group meetings, and it is one-on-ones as well. And so within the program, people really learn from starting with pre-integration and preparation,
Mhm.
how to work with medicine in a good way. And so it's really education based and supporting people and becoming their own best healers. As I said, that's really, I feel like, the work that I am here to do is not to be um making anyone feel like they have to be dependent on me, but for everyone to awaken to their own inner voice on
Mhm.
how to learn how to listen to themselves. And, especially for people in recovery, we have our addict mind and then we have our highest self. And so how do we make sure that we know the difference
Mhm.
is an important part of what I teach. And then we also have our guide program. So the first cohort of our guide program is actually launching at the end of June. And we are training people to guide others on this path. So similarly to the idea of a sponsor, a sponsor's true job is to put someone's hand in the hand of God. That is their true job. And of course, as I said, the difference between the program and the community, the individuals don't always follow that. Oftentimes they do, give you other advice about where to work and who to date, but that's not really the true job of a sponsor. It is someone who is supposed to connect you with spirit. And so I kind of formulated the guide training around this idea of putting someone's hand in the hand of their plant allies. So how do we guide others? How do we guide others to work with these medicines, starting with pre-integration and going through, I work with the medicine wheel. It's
Great.
one of my teacher, her name is Winter, that she passed on this amazing tool for us to connect to the earth energies and to learn how to live in harmony. And so by working within the altar of the medicine wheel, we can integrate our experiences, starting with pre-integration and then learning about all of the different medicines and what medicines are called for at what times, and even
Right.
what lineage is called for. For some people, they want to sit with ayahuasca, but they have no idea that sitting in a Shipibo ceremony is very different than sitting with a Hunikuin or a Yawanawa
Mhm.
ceremony or going
Right.
to a Colombian Taita. It's all very different. And so, just providing education to people so that they can provide that to others.
Wonderful.
Really teaching about the decolonization of medicine and how we can show up respecting the cultures that these medicines came from in a good way. And also decolonizing our minds too. How do we make sure that we are, working with these medicines with reciprocity and respect and asking permission and having consent and everything that comes with that path? And then teaching people how to basically be integration coaches and recovery coaches as well. And then there is a piece as well from a harm reduction lens on how to hold space. And so that's really primarily what the guide training is for, is learning how to become a clear channel so that you can support another person without bringing yourself into it. Because really, as healers, what we're really meant to be doing is to be that clear channel and to take everything that makes us human out of it and
Mhm.
just be with someone in their journey and really make sure that we're not giving advice that isn't called for and anything like that, but we're asking the right questions so that people can start to learn how to listen to themselves, because that's where the real change happens.
Wow, that is just also wonderful. And it just feels so good that we have someone out there like you doing this work. Um, Obviously, I think nowadays the word psychedelics and psilocybin, MDMA is just so overly saturated, and it's kind of like, of course, there's curiosity, but I think what people need to understand is the absolute responsibility and reverence, and the wisdom behind these ancient medicines, and even um, yeah, it just can be such an overwhelming but beautiful exploration. But anytime somebody's offering, more accessible education and integration, it's just so wonderful and so thankful for you and your programs.
Yeah, I have two other things that I forgot to mention as well.
Okay.
I have two other free offerings as
Oh,
well. So
sure.
I have a free microdosing workbook and also a free masterclass for people in recovery learning how to work with medicine, kind of on that very first step. So
Oh,
both of
wow.
those things are available either on my website or if you DM me on Instagram or anything like that, you can get access to those.
Okay, great. And we'll go over some of those contact details. Um, I was going to ask, so your first guide cohort, that is starting when?
The end of June.
Okay. that is one I have my eye on. And yeah, I guess let's talk about how people find out about some of these free offerings. We can have them head to your website, correct? Which
Yeah.
is,
Yeah. My website is plantalliedrecovery.com.
all right. And then let's say we want to get in on the weekly recovery. Is that just something anyone can sign up for?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we do ask that anyone who shows up, if you are wanting to speak, that you do have to be, sober in order to share. We have some people that come that, struggle with their relationship to cannabis and other types of medicines that are more casually used.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, we really want the people that are speaking to be people who are, totally sober to speak, but also anyone who feels that they identify with the ideology of recovery, anyone who is in recovery from toxic relationships or codependency or overeating or all of these other addictions
Mm,
that we can have in our life, we're also totally welcome to come. It's the same principles of healing for all of us, and we can still find camaraderie together.
wonderful. And you said that's every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time?
Yes,
Okay. I might pop into one.
totally. Yeah, it's fun.
Well, that's such a great offering. And then, yeah, I head to plantalliedrecovery.com to learn more about the courses and group coaching, correct? And individual.
Yeah.
Um,
And my Instagram too also always has, my most updated offerings. There are sometimes free workshops that I'll put on for the community that I think will be beneficial for
oh, great.
all. And so those are usually more on my Instagram, which is at Keelia.Ryan, my name.
Awesome. And I will be putting together a little something that showcases how to contact you because this is also a visual podcast. I wanted to just quickly get back. You said you were just at was it a fungal event or what was going on there?
Yeah, Maine Fungi Fest. It was really, really fun. I had an incredible time, and it was huge. It was I think over 1,000 people showed up. There was music and dancing and all sorts of events, and I did a talk there on people in recovery on the medicine path.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
and it was really incredible. Hill of the Earth was there, who's really awesome and amazing, and I befriended her, and a bunch of other great people who are doing amazing work for the earth in our world.
Wow. Well, good for you. I am so happy for you, Keelia. And you have been a huge inspiration for me. I think I randomly connected with you on Instagram a couple months ago, and I'm so happy that we reconnected. I'd love to keep in touch too, especially I want to touch base after your first cohort and just see you grow and continue to serve and help so many people that need it and just making people just normalizing with responsibility, just kind of one of the best assets that our universe has to offer. Do you have anything else before we wrap up here?
Hmm. Yeah, I would just say I think that for anyone that is called to the medicine path in any way, that especially these other medicines like that I've mentioned, like iboga and ayahuasca, I think it's really, really important to do your research and find the right person to sit with. As
Mm,
I shared, I have had some experiences being in unsafe containers, and you are just so energetically vulnerable when you're in those spaces, and just it's not it's really not something that you want to go through. So just really do your work and vet medicine carriers, and even medicine that you buy online. There's a lot of
mm.
microdosing products out there that have research chemicals and actually are totally unregulated and not what they're advertising they are. So just really, I think that for the conversation of harm reduction and of working with these medicines in a good way, doing your research for absolutely everything is going to be really important, in using discernment and listening to your gut and making sure that you're feeling really safe about whatever medicine you choose to work with. Because as healing as it is a huge responsibility. It is something that requires a lot of care. And there are a lot of people in this space that don't know how to provide the level of care that is being called for because of how much humanity needs healing right now. So, that's what I wanted to share.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's also true. And hopefully you can maybe be of assistance to some people that do need assistance in getting those answers or their questions answered. Well, thank you. Thank you, Keelia. This has been wonderful. I will be sure to keep in touch with you, and I wish you well with your first cohort. And just thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on this podcast and connected with you. And I honor you on your 19 months coming up. That's
Ah,
amazing.
thank you
Um,
so much.
yeah, and thank you. And I hope that, yeah, everyone listening just feels very, very safe and connected to themselves and to the medicines and that they are guided.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
For more information, please visit mindsonmushrooms.com. Thank you for joining the journey.